Hi everybody, I'm Brie the Plant Lady coming to you from my parents' garden in beautiful Aiken, South Carolina, Zone 8. We are gonna do a few kind of spring landscape jobs today in preparation of creating a new kind of foodscaped area that'll be all seasonal vegetables over here. So today we are going to transplant some of the grass that's in here, and we're just gonna move it across the driveway to a bed where they have a bunch of this grass already. And then we are going to sort of rough up the soil a bit. We're gonna plant some blood lilies that I just got from Jake's farmer, which will bloom in the summer. And then we're gonna top dress with soil cube and scatter buckwheat and crimson clover so that it'll fill in all the gaps through the spring season while these grasses kind of get established and grow out. So the one advantage of your soil is that it's pretty easy to dig, but it's really lacking organic matter. I spend a lot of time in my programs explaining why you need to add organic matter to your soil, and you see it's almost just like builder's sand what you have here. So it drains really fast, doesn't hold nutrients. It's a struggle to get plants to thrive in this. I mean, this feels like a sandbox. So the key here is continuously adding organic matter, and you'll notice pine needles don't break down. They don't actually add any organic matter. This is why I use triple shred hardwood mulch, because it does decompose in about 6 months, and that adds organic matter to your soil. So you're actually, by using hardwood mulch, you're actually helping build your soil. Whereas the pine needles don't do anything. They just kind of fade, but they don't decompose. And so it's really not the best mulch to use. I know that it's accessible for gardeners in the South, and by all means, if you have big pine trees that are dropping needles, you should use them. But if you're having to buy it, I would just skip the pine needles and use hardwood mulch. But before you put mulch down, you should definitely amend your soil by adding compost, specifically soil cube. Promise you will never regret the investment that you spend when you invest in soil cube. All right, well, we're gonna dig these 5 holes and get these planted, and we're gonna top dress because we don't have a lot of soil cube right now. We're gonna top dress with the little bit that we have. We're gonna fill in the gaps by direct seeding buckwheat and crimson clover, both of which are great cover crops for helping build soil and add organic matter. And we're also gonna add the dozen blood lilies that we got for this bed. So this is gonna be a high impact bed this summer. It's gonna look cool.
I'm looking forward to it.
So now we have the Scadoxus, or the blood lily. And these are a really extraordinary plants. They kind of bloom a little bit like Horus in that they flower before they leaf out. And they're really versatile. They're best in zone 8 and warmer. I zone bed and grow them in my zone 7 garden. Jake's farmer definitely is the place to buy these at, and he's selling them right now. This is why we have them. I went down and visited the Crinum farm yesterday. And I think to maximize, we have 12. I think we'll do 3 locations and have them in bulk. That way it looks really dynamic when they flower. Their blooms are like a big, round, bright red, almost like fireworks. Really cool. They don't have to be planted super deep, so I'm just using my favorite tool, Handmatic, and I'm gonna put that's about 5 inches, and we're just gonna drop the bulb in. When you look at the bulb, here's the top. So plant it top side up. Bulbs are capable of orienting themselves, but that'll give you a good head start. And I don't want it to be too close to the crinum because the crinum will get quite large. And these are just gonna kind of pop up in. So we're gonna ideally locate these kind of closer to the front of the border so they're really going to be obvious to see. Just like that, I think we'll do groups of 3. We'll scatter them throughout this bed. So you just cover them up. And you'll forget they're there, which is fine because we're not going to plant another hole. We're not going to dig another hole over these. However, you can easily cover crop over these by direct seeding, and that's where our buckwheat and crimson clover are going to come into play. If you noticed, I cleared the whole middle of this bed. We just put all the existing pine straw out to the edge, and that's going to allow us to have the perfect surface to direct seed these 2 cover crops, which will flower and be beautiful, but also when they die, they'll add organic matter, helping improve the soil, because this soil is terrible. All right, now our final step before sowing the seeds is to scatter some beautiful black cake mix soil cube down. And I came in a Prius, so I could only bring 2 bags. So we're just gonna try to, not give it to all to one place, because I really want you to have cover crops everywhere in this bed. You can see 1 cubic foot in the landscape doesn't go as far as it does when you're doing it in containers, which is why for the other side we're going to have you use 1 cubic yard. But for now, 1 bag, and you can put it here. You see I'm just going to spread it out using a hard rake, and really for this bed you could probably use 10 bags total if you were going to do it nice and thick. That's like the ideal thickness right there. And actually this will be a good experiment for you. You'll be able to tell me if the cover crops do better in these tiny patches of soil cube compared to the native soil, which I know they will. I always top dress with soil cube. You don't have to have a ton, especially when you've built your soil nicely, but it really helps with the germination of the seedlings when you're direct seeding. So really the trick to successful direct seeding is all in your soil preparation. All right, the final step is really the easiest step ever, and this is kind of my approach to not mulching. It's to cover the ground up with things you're growing intentionally. Whether you call them cover crop or not, doesn't really matter. The theory is the same. So we're going to do buckwheat. Let me show you what, and that's good. Stop it. Buckwheat seed looks like. It's kind of sort of triangular and black. And this is usually 30 days from seed to flowering. So buckwheat is a really efficient ground plane coverer. And you're basically just going to take the seeds and scatter them.
Like you're bowling.
Just like you're bowling. These are my 1 ounce packets that I sell at live events only for $5 a pack. It's kind of the perfect amount for a residential landscape, just to fill in gaps. I've learned from experience, like everybody doesn't need 5 pounds of buckwheat, but everybody could use 1 ounce and, cover up some open space to save on work and money from not having to mulch so much. So you can see I'm literally just tossing these right down onto the ground in all the open areas. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the crimson clover. Let me show you what those seeds look like. They're quite different. And the thing with clover and buckwheat together, they both look really great. They're not super tall, which is handy. You don't want something that's going to be 6 foot tall in this bed. You're looking at, about 18 to 20 inches tall, and they'll both flower together. White flowers for buckwheat, red flowers for crimson clover. And it'll be a really pretty combo. Now, as a cover crop, these are both considered chop and drop. That's their mechanization for actually incorporating nitrogen into the soil. So you would basically just cut these down, you know, either with a lawnmower or a weed eater when you're finished looking at them, and they'll decompose in place and add nitrogen to your soil, naturally fertilizing the next round of plants that you grow. Now the last step of all is just to lightly rake over everything. I'm going to use the back side of this hard rake, and this is just to make sure that the cover crops of crimson clover and buckwheat have good contact with the soil. That way they'll germinate. I have noticed in my zone 7 garden that buckwheat is already starting to germinate. In Aiken, I bet that by the end of the week you're going to see tiny little seedlings starting to emerge from the ground. The more you have of ground plane coverage, the less weeding you're going to have to do. So this is a really high impact, beautiful way to increase biodiversity, ultimately grow your own fertilizer, and have a gorgeous spring display just by scattering a handful of seed packets out. Well, I hope you found this video to be helpful. Be sure to subscribe to the Brie the Plant Lady YouTube channel for more practical gardening advice. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.